A 14-year-old is given drugs.
Every single teenager will have a crisis.
Harassing them to do that every single day, that's torture.
I have shouted. I have taken his phone. I have got angry. What can I do now?
Being dumped by a boyfriend or girlfriend. I still love you. I'll be annoyed. I'll be frustrated. I won't be happy. I'll be sad, but I'll still love you. In that second, I literally saw her shoulders drop.
There was a kid who was, he was in a very, very difficult place. And so he posted on Instagram.
Is when I was 13, 14, I started thinking and I started observing. That's when everything started getting confusing.
Hello and welcome to Season 1 of Bridging the Gap, the podcast where parents and teenagers come to understand each other better through honest, respectful, thoughtful conversation. In each episode, I sit down with someone who has a unique window into the teenage world. Whether it's a parent, a teacher, a coach, or the teen themselves, we talk openly about the things that often go unspoken. Mental health, peer pressure, identity, spirituality, technology, and everything in between. If you find something here that speaks to you, please do hit the subscribe button. It really keeps us going. This is Bridging the Gap.
In today's episode, I'm speaking with someone whose work has impacted many lives, from busy executives to overwhelmed parents, and whose insights around connection, compassion, and communication are helping people across the world feel more aligned and understood. Yaakov Tatz is a parenting and interpersonal relationship coach, and for the past 15 years, he's been helping people transform the way they show up in their families, in their work, and in their own inner world. His background includes years in Jewish education, time spent as a community rabbi alongside his wife in Welland Garden City, and extensive coaching in both the corporate and personal space. But today, we're not just speaking to Yaakov the coach or Yaakov the rabbi, we're speaking to Yaakov the person. This conversation is a powerful look back at what it was like for him growing up in the frum world as the son of a well-known rabbi and the inner journey that's brought him from struggle to healing. We talk about emotional honesty, disconnection, anger, compassion, and the belief that the more clearly we see the world and ourselves, the more whole and healthy we become. It's raw, it's thoughtful, and whether you're a parent trying to understand your child or a teenager figuring yourself out, you'll gain a lot from hearing about Yaakov's journey. This is a conversation about healing, about honesty, and as always, about bridging the gap. Yaakov, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me, Doron. I appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege. Spending time with you. I think you're so cool. No, I actually do think you're so cool. And I genuinely am, like, part of me was thinking, are we doing the emotional thing? Should I be honest with
We can, look, so people know, we spend a lot of time growing up together, so we know each other well.
I guess people don't know our relationship.
Exactly, so it's maybe better to preface how we know each other first.
It's true. Just a mental note to self to remember to keep it kosher, right?
100% kosher.
So, how do me and you know each other, Doron?
We was in Hasmo, back in school.
That's right, because I joined Hasmo for sixth form.
Yeah.
And that's when you were there already.
Yeah, and our paths sort of crossed, coming from a quite different beginnings, but we definitely crossed, and we were in Hasmo together, in yeshiva together.
And then we were roommates for 2 years.
For 2 years.
I think we're both still scarred from that to some degree.
Oh, not at all. For me, it healed a lot.
That's a good time.
And then our paths are crossed in chinuch as well. So we know, look, thank God, Baruch Hashem, we know each other well. So when I was starting to do this pod, and I'm thinking, teenagers, parents.
Can you just tell me in one sentence, what is your pod? What is this podcast?
100%. It was funny because another guest asked that to me as well. The purpose of this podcast is to bridge the gap between two generations that seem really far away. I take a lot of calls from parents and I speak to, obviously as my job, to a lot of different teenagers, and really both generations feel quite distant and quite alone. And I think the truth is that there's a lot of not just commonality between what they're going through, but even if there isn't, neither side is alone. There are many parents going through the same problem as the parent listening to this. It feels like they're the only one. And there are many teenagers who are listening to this, and they might feel very alone, but there are lots of teenagers going through the same thing, but we often don't bring it to light. So this parent will speak to their rabbi or their therapist, and this kid will speak to their teacher or Rebbitzin or whatever it is, and people can feel very quite alone, especially in our community, where sometimes it's difficult to speak up. I mean, that's changing. It's changing quickly, but especially, I think that's why what I would like to do with this pod is to bring these conversations out there, help people understand each other, help people realize they're not alone. And just to add on is that, of course, a lot of our guests are hopefully going to be rabbis, rebbitzins, experts, that sort of thing. But much more is to have people with lived experience. I think it's really huge to listen to people that have lived, a certain teenage. Everyone's lived teenage years, of course, but in terms of those struggles or those difficulties that really give people chizuk or things like that. I think it's important to hear from the teenagers and from the parents themselves. You're helping parents and sort of as part of what you do. I mean, we're parents ourselves. You're a parent of a teenager now, aren't you?
My daughter's 12. Yeah, it's pretty.
Does that count?
It depends on the day, but yeah.
So I'm saying, you could probably now, all three. So you've been a teenager, you are a parent of a teenager, and you're also in your work, you're a rabbi, and you're quite a bucky now in these inyanim and these things. So that's essentially what in to answer your question is what the podcast is about, and what I'm hoping people listening can gain from listening to you.
That's so cool. It really is cool. It really, really is cool. And I think that's a massive need. It is a massive need. I don't know, I once saw a really, really cool t-shirt that said, sometimes you love it was a quote somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but it said, sometimes parents love their children in a language they don't speak. You can love your child infinitely and intensely, but if that love is not being communicated in a language the kid speaks, then it's like you can go into a shop and buy something and you may have enough money, but if you have the wrong currency, they can't help you. You might have way more money than the item's worth, but if it's not in the right currency, you have to go home. And very often, and I think this is also true for me and you. I mean, not me and you personally, but maybe me and you personally, but our generation and our parents' generation, a lot of parents, the way they would show their kids love was through paying for their school fees or letting them live in their house. What do you mean? I'm giving you everything. I gave you clothes, I gave you food, I gave you shelter. I don't have to. You're 17, you're 18, you're 16. I could send you to boarding school. A lot of your whatever. I don't know. Every parent, for some parents, that may be their love. And for a kid, it's okay, well, that's amazing. It's got to be the right. So all I'm saying is, I think this podcast is amazing. I think there's a massive need to bridge that gap, and I think that that gap is the cause for so much real pain and suffering in today's world. It's funny because I got into this whole work in a very unusual sort of way. I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a psychotherapist. I have zero qualifications in the mental health field at all, and I'm happy about that. And I keep it that way on purpose, for several reasons. But I'm an educator. That's what I am. Okay, I'm an educator. I'm a rabbi, and I basically now in my work I teach people how the mind works. Okay, that's my thing, and I've created a whole framework teaching people how the mind works and how people work and how we can connect and understand people. And I do that as an education. And the way I got into it about 15 years ago, when I started mentoring, I was a teenager myself, right? And I had friends who were doing really, 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 really scary things, and they were in a very dark place. And I basically realized, their life is at risk. Quite literally, their life is at risk. And I just felt like I had no choice, and I started mentoring.
You did this as a teenager?
Yeah, when I was 17, 18, 19, I was mentoring. I had friends, and so a little bit of context, right? So I myself as a teenager really struggled, right? Starting from the age of 13, 14, 15, Like I was in a very, very religious, ultra-Orthodox, you can call it very Haredi school. Had a horrendous time there on a personal level. Really, really bad experience. I don't know how much you want me to share, but I had a really bad experience there.
Share whatever you're comfortable with.
So there were two types of teachers and educators in that school. There was the misguided, but ultimately good people, and then there was fundamentally crooked people. Okay, I'll explain to you my journey of healing through that whole experience. Is very important because today I'm in a place where I don't really hold on to any anger anymore. Okay, there must be still some residual anger, and that may never go away, and that's okay. But it's like it's a fraction of what was there, you know, and that's normal and healthy. And there were some rabbis who were good people, and they had a philosophy that maybe not was correct at some point somewhere in history. I don't know, I don't care, but it was definitely wrong for us. I'm talking like really, really strict, you know, teachers who would hit the students, and really, 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 really intense, you know, old school, let's call it old school discipline. And that was a philosophy, that was a life's perspective, and that was, they would quote the Rambam, you know. And we can sit and argue for hours and hours, and whether it's right or wrong, I don't care about that. That wasn't so, even though I was subject to their, let's quote unquote, discipline, right? That didn't scar me. What scarred me was the people who should not have been teachers. But they became teachers probably because they had nothing else to do, or they couldn't get a job somewhere else. So they did what they'd been learning for many years. So let's just go teach Torah. But to be a teacher in a school, you need to be you need to be someone who's a master of education. You need to know the world of the kids that you're involved in. You need to love and care about them deeply. And if you don't, stay away from the school, right? So those people did a tremendous amount of damage, and they're going to have to answer for that someday, right? But the point is that I suffered a lot. I suffered a lot.
Why you specifically? Or
not me specifically. I have friends who I think suffered a lot more than me. I don't know. I don't know why me specifically. I have a hard enough time with my own life. You know, I can't really speak for other people so much, although now I can. But I had a really hard time, and for me, one of the hardest things, obviously outside the personal trauma or whatever negative experiences I went through, putting it mildly, but I think interestingly, one of the things that affected me in a very intense way was the hypocrisy. Is seeing somebody preach something, because that was there's two aspects of this conversation, right? There's the mental health challenges of like growing up with trauma, whatever that looks like for different people, and then there's the relationship with Judaism. Which one are you more interested in?
I want to hear about both, but I'm interested also that you separated the two.
Well, they are two separate things because I have friends who just made a choice that this Judaism that I've been seeing is not for me, and I'm out. And they checked out of Judaism, and they, in many ways, developed a very healthy physical, emotional lifestyle. You know, they disconnected entirely from the Jewish world because they didn't like what they saw, became secular, and live. Okay, you never know what's going on in someone's head, in their heart, and behind closed doors. But for the most part, they live normal, healthy, happy lives. They're just not frum. Now we can argue, is that whatever, but
then why wouldn't the mental health issues and the trauma, let's say, from being in that sort of system still stay with them, irrespective of?
It may or may not. It may or may not.
But just lock it away. That's Judaism. You lock it away and move
either
on.
That was Judaism, or that was my experience, or that was trauma, and I healed from that. But and some people, you know, associated with that with Judaism, and they threw everything away, and for them Judaism meant trauma. That's really sad.
It's really sad. Yeah,
that is really sad.
Yeah.
And for me, I was blessed to have a home that the Judaism was really healthy, and the home was very healthy. My personal home, my parents are incredible people, and my home was always incredible for me. It was an amazing place. No home is perfect. No parents are perfect. No, best parents in the world are not perfect.
Of course.
But I had an unbelievably incredible, loving, warm home. The issue for me was the community and the schooling. horrendous. That was horrendous. And I'm probably healthy, I'm definitely, to whatever degree I am healthy today and frum, is because of my family, right? My family, my parents, my siblings. And the difficulty I had was from the community. And what's really, really interesting is that I got really badly affected by the hypocrisy, the dishonesty. You're preaching a certain way because the Torah says X, Y, and Z, but then
You're talking about the Jewish impact now. Are you separating the two? You're saying there's the Jewish impact it had, and then there's the mental health trauma aspect.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Jewish one now. What the Jewish impact was of your schooling experience.
I guess they are connected.
In a specific section of a community, no?
Yeah, so I guess they are connected because for me they were at the same time. So in my teenage years, I because of the difficulty I had with the trauma and the hypocrisy that I saw from a Jewish point of view, I sort of said, okay, I'm out, I'm done. I'm going to do my own thing. And I pretty much did my own thing for a bunch of years. And what happened was when I was like 17, 18, I started to clean up and, get a bit more serious and realize I didn't want to live a life of total annihilation. And annihilation is probably the wrong word, but I didn't want to live a life of complete and utter chaos. So I started to sort of grow up basically, start thinking about, what do I live for? Why am I in this world? And I got quite deep at that point. I think you knew me then. That's when you sort of knew me. What's also really interesting, by the way, and I think it's really important to say this, is I moved from a very, very frum, ultra-Orthodox Haredi school to Hasmonean. And Hasmonean, in that frum, really religious school, I was the goy. I was literally the goy of the class.
Yeah.
Because my kippah didn't have a rim around it, or because I don't even know if people understand what this is, but because I spoke to girls, or, God forbid, went to the cinema, so that literally made me the goy. Then when I went to Hasmo for sixth form, I was the biggest rabbi in the world because I knew so much.
Yeah.
Because I'd grown up in a frum home, a very, knowledgeable home, and I had a very frum background. I knew probably the most in the class. So people started asking me questions, and I had friends who would sort of ask me, and I was like, hey, I really, I know this stuff, and I was able to help. And I think that made a massive impact on me. Also, Hasmonean didn't pressure me to do...
Totally different experience, yeah.
I had an experience in my old school. I think it's important to say this. I had one experience when I was maybe in 3rd or 4th year of high school. Couldn't have been older than 15, right? And I came in late for the morning class, right? I came into school at, I don't know, 10, and there was a Gemara Shea going on. So I walked into class, and the rabbi called me to the front, in front of everyone, and he says to me, "Did you pray?" And I lied, and I said yes. So he says, "Did you put on tefillin?" And I said yes. He goes, "What part of Shacharis?" He opened up a siddur in front of the whole class, and he pointed, he goes, "Tell me what you said." Yeah, which part of Shacharis did you say? And I just I'm thinking back now, I'm 34, and I'm in what world is that a normal, healthy, constructive thing? Which kid walks away from that saying, "Oh, let's go daven now with Kavanah. That was really good for me." That was misguided. Yeah. That's a misguided philosophy of that's not how you educate, right? That's how you destroy. So in Hasmo, no one cared if I davened or not. I think, do you remember Rabbi Hartman would come pick me up? Would come pick us up. What a legend!
I do remember.
So he'd come around. He'd do his rounds at 7 a.m, and I remember I remember being so angry. I was like, I want to sleep right now, and my mum would be like, "Yo, the rabbi's here," and he'd get in the car, and he's got this smile on his face, and he'd tell you a joke, and I was just like, I can't be angry at this man. He just loves me so much, and then but really, if we didn't go to base and daven, no one cared. We could do our own thing. Right? And that was really healthy for me. That was really healthy. So what happened then, this was really interesting, is that I started getting a lot more stable in my own life. And a lot of my friends were still in a very, very dark place, doing very dark things. And that was really scary. So I don't know how this happened, but I just went into mentor mode. And I started mentoring and teaching, and I haven't really stopped. And
you were incredibly, even at that age when we just met, you were incredibly easy to talk to.
Right.
And you were the rabbi of the group. We used to call you Spiritual Tea.
Yeah, they used to, remember the raps we used to
Yeah.
with Daniel, and
Those will be released one day.
those were good days. I don't know if those could be released. One just really interesting thing about those times, Doron, is that I had friends on the street, like I'm talking gangs, like not,
Were you mentoring in Clubhouse then?
kind of. It was a bit of overlap.
Okay.
I wasn't ever working for them, but the Clubhouse did something amazing for me, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But I had friends who weren't Jewish, like, on the street. And I came into Hasbro and I became friends with people who, like, were in my school, but they weren't eating kosher. Do you remember?
Mm.
And I remember seeing, like, it was such an interesting contrast of, like, the life on the street with the hooligans of, like, antisocial, completely reckless, rebellious behavior, and then civilized human beings who just weren't frum. I'd never really seen that. And then, do you remember in that psychology class? Do you remember in A-levels?
Yeah.
There was a group of boys who weren't frum at all, but they had got in contact with Aish, and they were getting inspired by Rabbi Rowe. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And I remember I was being inspired by Rabbi Rowe because he would speak to us on Sunday morning, and I was, like, blown away. And it was like a really healthy look at Judaism from a new perspective. That was really healthy for me. It was really, really healthy to, like, okay, what is davening? What is Shabbos? What are these mitzvahs about? And that was really, really good for my healing. And it was also good for my Jewish learning because I was able to look at it from a... Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So what do you want to ask me? Because I can go on and on and on about all...
So you got teenage years, and then what's yeshiva like for you? How's it?
Then I went to yeshiva. At that point, I had more or less made a decision that I really wanted to take it seriously, at least give it a shot. Josh once told me years ago that when he went to yeshiva, he discovered that yeshiva is not about going to learn Torah. It's about getting a real glimpse of Judaism, and are you in or are you out? That's basically what yeshiva... I think very few people actually remember what they learned in their first few years of yeshiva life, right? But you get given tools and you get given a glimpse of what real, authentic Judaism is, and you make a choice. Do you want it or do you not want it? And I think that was quite healthy for me in many ways. I think for you, those first few years in yeshiva were very interesting because that was quite oppressive, probably, and quite intense.
Is your business or product just not being seen? Then this is for you. Bridging the Gap is reaching thousands across the Jewish community on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Every episode is cut into short clips and shared across all platforms so your message gets seen again and again. And because it's a podcast, it doesn't get missed or thrown away like a flyer or a newspaper. It stays. If you want your brand to be seen across the London Jewish community and by thousands across the globe, email sales@bridgingthegappodcast.com and speak to one of the team.
For me, I'd never experienced something like that.
That's really interesting. And I had it interesting because I've always struggled with academic learning. So I really struggled in yeshiva because yeshiva is very academic, you're sitting learning Gemara most of the day. So I went on a bit of a journey and I did a couple of years here, a couple of years there. But I knew I knew that there was something there for me and I knew I wanted to pursue it. And then eventually, I'm fast forwarding many, many years, but I found my rabbi, I found Rabbi Berkowitz, and that's really when I discovered like what it is I need to do in the world. And I just share with you one really powerful anecdote is that all my time in yeshiva, and then I got married and I was in Kollel, obviously I was still friends with everyone because like your friends are your friends, but I never really stayed in touch with my old friends, like the friends from the street, right? And then in like, it must have been a year or two before I left Kollel, one of my friends died. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And that shook us, that shook everyone. I mean, it wasn't the first and it wasn't the last, but it really, like, I remember being at his funeral and reconnecting with all my old friends. And it was in that moment where I just had this feeling of like, you don't get to sit and learn Torah forever when you can make an impact. You just can't. You just cannot sit and learn Torah on your tuchas all day, every day, in the in a state of bliss when the world is broken and needs you to help. Okay, there's a time period that people need to incubate and learn 100% fine to each their own. But at some point, you've got to go give back. You've got to go and make an impact on the world. You've got to go and help and heal and fix and do your best. And I think in this topic that you, Doron, are speaking about, bridging the gap, connecting to teenagers, very few people. There are a lot of very holy rabbis in the world who can tell you tremendous amount of Torah. There are a lot of people in the world who are teenagers who know that world. There's very few people who legit can bridge the gap. And if you're one of those people that gets both of those worlds, you have an obligation to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, that's really what I realized I had to do. I had to get into that space and start doing that. So I basically took mentoring much more seriously. And then I would say about 10 years ago, I made a decision that whenever someone would contact me to try help their son or their child, I would basically only work with parents. And and this is really important. You've got parents listening to your stuff, right?
Hope so.
So I'm sure parents are listening to your stuff. I discovered that you can work with a kid, a 15-year-old boy who's struggling immensely, right, for 6 months. And you'll make an impact eventually, right? If again, this is not a science and I'm not giving you hard statistics, but if I would spend 2-3 weeks with the parents and get through to them, you can make the same level of impact. And that reason is because for teenagers, what their parents think about them is everything. How your parents view you is everything. Any child, holds their parent in such intense esteem. Their parent is like everything. And if your parent's not happy with you, your world is if you've got some mentor, tutor, psychotherapist, therapist, or who's helping you, okay, that's wonderful, but doesn't compare to parents. If parents play the right card, they can make the change. They almost always can. And that's why I just shifted. I basically occasionally here and there I would, but for the most part, if I would get contacted to help, I would basically say, I'd basically insist on only working with the parents. And I cannot tell you the shift I saw. And that's basically now what I do. Now I teach other people as well. And
what was it? So before you get to that point where you start working with parents, what is it that Rav Berkovitz taught you over time that made you realize, because obviously you've come from a journey with its ups and downs and the way you relate to Judaism at different levels, but then to take on the mentorship of being a rabbi, an educator, a mashpia is quite a big thing.
Yeah, and to this day I feel deeply, deeply inadequate. I have, you might call it imposter syndrome or insecurities or whatever the words are. I look around and I sometimes think it's a joke that people call me rabbi. It's I'll just tell you one thing. When I left, when me and Eliana left Israel to come back to England, we went to say goodbye to Rabbi Berkovitz, and I had decided in my own heart, that no one's calling me rabbi. I'm just I'm not going to let anyone call me rabbi. Yeah, it's just who wants to be called rabbi? It's so awkward, right? Rabbi Tatz. So I didn't say this to a soul. I didn't tell a single person that I'm going to insist on being called Yaakov. Yeah. We went into Rabbi Berkovitz, and I kid you not, this is how you can ask Eliana, this literally happened. And I said, have you got any last minute advice for me before we go? So he said, yes, make sure you go by Rabbi Tatz and not Yaakov. And I was like, no, I think that's wrong, with all due respect. I think if you go by Rabbi, you create a distance between you and the people you teach, and we don't need more distance, we need closeness. So he said something really interesting. I don't remember his exact words that he used, but he basically said to me, you're a bit weird, you're a bit of an unusual guy, and if you go by Rabbi, if you go by Yaakov, you'll be an anomaly, you'll be an exception to the rule, you'll be your own freak sort of individual who does your thing. But if you go by Rabbi Tatz, then you're still going to be you, you're still going to do your thing, you're still going to connect to people in your way, but you're going to be educating people as to what a rabbi is supposed to be like. Because a rabbi is supposed to have the connection, it's supposed to have the closeness, it's not supposed to have the distance. So you can actually make a change. And that was really interesting. It was hard for me to hear that because I really didn't want to go by rabbi, yeah? But I did. I did, and sometimes I would go by Rabbi Yaakov or whatever, but I did follow.
Interesting. It's like then you educate other rabbis.
Yes, and I think that's really important because we're living in a different generation where you can be the holiest, most learned individual in the world. If you do not know the playground that you're playing in, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time, you know. I'm not a posek and I'm not a halachic rabbi in any way, shape, or form. But this applies to halacha as well. If you don't know the reality of what you're determining the halacha about, it's a waste of time. Even on a simple level, mental health, right? If someone's having a mental health crisis and they need to watch the football for their mental health, and let's say they're suffering from something severe, that's a halachic question. And if the rabbi doesn't know the ins and outs of the mental health reality, that's really scary. And I've seen mistakes. I've seen rabbis make mistakes in that area because they didn't know the mitzvahs, they didn't know the reality. That's really scary. That is really, really scary. And that's why I feel an obligation. If you're familiar with the reality, then you have to speak up, and you've got to do your best to tell people what's going on. Young people today I can't tell you, like, young people today are battling such intense things that parents wouldn't have, like, we never had a clue. Like, they wouldn't have had a clue what to do in that situation. And until you're familiar with it inside out, you cannot understand it. You just can't. So to a parent, it's like, dude, clean your room. I've asked you 15 times, clean your room. The kid's like, no. So to the parent, the kid's being rude and defiant. But, like, what's the kid gone through that day? What's the kid seen that day? You know, what's he heard in school? A 15-year-old kid, the stuff they're seeing and hearing is, like, mental. Yeah. And if they don't have a place to process that, that's very scary. You know. Now, again, it could be the kid being defiant, but very often it's like there's something going on, and unless you have a familiarity with that world, that's like can be really intense. So that's why I basically felt an obligation to go into that world. And now basically that's one of the things I do is I basically teach parents how to connect or reconnect to their teenager. And I've created a program. I've created a really cool program that enables parents to reconnect. And I mean, thank God I've had really good feedback. And it's all common sense and things that we know already, but it's reframing it in a way. And because I've been doing this for over 10 years, I've been able to condense the most valuable pieces of information that will make a difference.
Can any parent access that? I mean, as in you've spoken about how you saw you had a specific talent in this area. If I'm a parent listening, and maybe I'm listening to this because I don't feel so adequate or talented in this, can any parent access the tools that you've got to offer?
Yeah. We live in a very small world, and people can find me. You know,
I don't mean access as in can they find it. I mean accessing it is they may not have your personality or your understanding of the playground you spoke about.
That's a very, very, very good point. So I'll tell you how it came about. So, and it's interesting because maybe it's a different conversation which we can have, but my mental health journey is a completely different story. You know, my awareness of my own psychology and my journey through therapy and through learning the mind and learning my own mind and coming to grips with that. And I've been doing that intensely for a long time. And that's a completely different story. But I, and this relates to that in a very real way, I've always been able to understand people ever since I can remember. I've always had this ability to understand and connect people. Maybe it's because I lived in 3 different countries and I was in 17 different schools and I had friends from all over the world, you know, all ages and stages. I don't know. Maybe it's something you're born with. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't care. It's just something that I've always been able to do. I've always been able to understand people. And I would often spend time with a kid and I'd then speak to the parent after. The parent is like, how did you do that? Or the teacher would say to me, how did you get through to that kid? And I would get very awkward. I didn't know what to say. Like I don't know. Like Hashem just gave me the ability, or Hashem put the right words in my mouth, or like I'd get very insecure and uncomfortable with that sort of conversation. But at the back of my head, I remember always thinking, there's got to be a way to show people how to do that. It's not rocket science. There's got to be a way to deconstruct what I'm doing, right? There has to be a way. And in the past 2 years, that's what I've spent intense amount of time doing, is deconstructing how I do it, how people who are successful in this area do it, and teaching people how to do it. The only people who can't understand what I'm saying is two people who can't understand. There's two people who I refuse to work with, okay? One is people who are severely autistic and they have zero connection with emotion in a conventional way. So people who cannot express themselves emotionally at all, they need other help, not me. I can't help them, okay? The other kind of person I cannot help is somebody who refuses to learn. Somebody who says, no, I've got it all figured out. It's very often like I'll work with a parent.
If you're listening to this podcast and thinking this is exactly what we're dealing with at home, or our school is facing these challenges right now, then I want you to know something. Bridging the Gap is no longer just a podcast. I've formally launched Bridging the Gap Consultancy, a premium advisory service working with parents, schools, shuls, and community organizations navigating complex teenage dynamics. For parents, that might mean structured strategy around communication breakdown, ADHD or neurodiversity, behavioral escalation, or mediation between family and school. For organizations, it could mean a full youth provision audit, stakeholder interviews, a forward-thinking strategic report, or ongoing partnership to strengthen youth engagement and culture. This isn't coaching, it's strategic insight, practical implementation, and measurable change. If you'd like to explore working together, you can book a complimentary 30-minute consultation via the website bridgingthegapconsultancy.com. Details are in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
And then they schlep the spouse along. And like, it takes about 3 seconds to figure out if they do not want to be there and they're being forced to be there because their spouse has schlepped them along, you know. And okay, often we can get through to them, but if somebody's then there's nobody home, then like, I love you, but I can't talk to you. Anyone else, if they want to, they can learn. And the principles I teach are very simple. I'll give you one example. The seventh principle is the long game. Okay, it's called the long game. So, and I like, this is up there with probably one of the most important things you can ever tell a parent of a teenager. Teenagers go through crisis. They do. Either a boyfriend or girlfriend will dump them, or they will have some money stolen, or they'll fail some big exams, or they will have some mental health crisis, or a friend of them will go through something very scary. At some point in the kid's life, they're going to hit a crisis, guaranteed. And when that crisis hits, they're going to freak out. And when they freak out, they're going to really suffer, okay? And in that moment, they're going to turn to whoever they feel safe with. Because when we go through suffering, we need company. Now, if the parents have played their cards right, yeah, and they have that bridge built strong, bridging the gap, right? They've got a healthy, strong, solid bridge. Then the kid will walk along that bridge and come to the parent. But God forbid, if the parents have not played their cards right and they've burnt that bridge in the name of discipline or principles or halacha or Torah, but they burnt the bridge, then when that kid has a crisis, which is going to happen, they're going to go to someone they met online, or maybe a neighbor down the street, or maybe someone not so healthy for them.
Or a substance of some sort.
Or substance maybe, exactly, or a drug of their choice. And that's really scary, you know? And parents often say to me, I can't tolerate anymore. My child is smoking weed all the time. I have to put my foot down. Or my kid is on his phone till the wee hours of the morning and he's failing. And I'm very, very, very strict. I do not tell parents what to do, ever. Almost ever. You can't tell someone else what to do, but I can teach you principles. I can tell you the principle. The principle is do not burn the bridge. I don't care what you do not burn the bridge, because that is tantamount to throwing away the relationship.
But you're saying don't do anything if someone's smoking weed or someone's using their phone till 4 a.m.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to do something,
So that's the second
but you're saying
principle.
provided you can keep the bridge open.
Yes, exactly. The worst thing a parent can ever do is burn the bridge. Because then there's nothing that... the one quote on my website, there's one line I have. That's like in big writing. It's don't win the fight, win the relationship. Do not win the fight, win the relationship. Because if you have the relationship, you have everything. If you've lost the relationship, you've lost everything. And yes, obviously, if there's something terrible going on, sometimes a parent has to intervene. But there's ways of doing that. There's ways. I'll give you one example. Yeah, this is really the fifth principle of getting permission. But we'll speak about it. But the concept is like, so the story goes like this, right? Parent says to me, true story. He's got a 15-year-old son who's got himself an iPhone, unfiltered, open internet, smartphone, and he's on it till 5 a.m. Okay? Now, we know what the kid's doing. He can track his phone. And he's waking up at 7 or 8. He's a zombie. He's failing school. His life's a mess, and it's not sustainable, right? So the parent says to me, you can't ignore it. You can't watch that. You can't let the kid ruin his life. It could be the start of something really, really bad. But at the same time, if he puts up a fight and he attacks the kid head on, he's like, give me the phone, the kid's going to say no. If you take away the phone, the kid will just get another phone.
Yeah, or sometimes kids can't function without the phone.
Exactly.
It's like they can't. It's like they say the worst thing that you can do for an alcoholic is to take away all the alcohol.
Exactly.
They don't know how else to cope.
100%.
It's become the solution to a problem, and now you remove their only solution.
Exactly.
Some kids are like that with a phone.
100%. And a lot of adults are like that with their phone too.
I've seen it. It's interesting. I've seen it sometimes when someone's phone will get confiscated.
Yeah.
And no, when I started teaching, I never saw this.
Right.
But more recently, if someone's phone gets confiscated, it's like sometimes you have a kid just break down.
Yeah.
Just can't do it.
Yeah.
But go on, you were saying.
You reminded me of a very funny story. Maybe I'll tell you after. But from when I was teaching in Israel in that yeshiva, remember that yeshiva that I used to teach?
Yeah.
For the boys Neve wouldn't take.
Mm.
So I said to this parent, I said, there's only one solution to that problem of what do you do when you can't take away the phone, but you also can't ignore it, right? You have to be guided by the child because the child will know. Now, a lot of parents say this and they're like, oh, get me away from this rabbi. Like, what do you mean the child? The child doesn't know. He's up to his eyeballs in nonsense, right? But the child will know because the child's suffering in a massive way because of this phone.
Yeah.
So trust me, the child is struggling with that experience more than you are. But you've got to then enter a dialogue in a way where you've got permission from the child to have that dialogue. And if you have the permission, the child will tell you. And that's going to take us to the 8th principle, which is free will. Because every human being in the world has a point that they can actually control. There's something that they can do. And when you access that point, you can have healthy expectations that are realistic and practical for that child.
But take me through that dialogue. So if
I'm
the teenager.
So it involves the 2nd principle, the 5th principle, and the 8th principle, and the 7th principle. Okay.
Can we play it out if I'm a teenager?
100%. And forget the principles. I'll tell you the story.
Okay, go on. Yeah, go on.
What happened was the parent took the kid to a healthy environment, a place which was not judgmental, non-threatening, and loving, and they were just chilling. And this is crucial because this is context. This is environment. If you get this right, you can almost get everything else wrong. You're okay, you know. So it's a healthy environment. The kid's in a good headspace. They're having a healthy dialogue. They're in a loving space and they're chilling, okay? Then the father says to the son, look, we both know that like this phone situation is really bad, okay? He's not disciplining. He's not talking to the child. He's bringing up the conversation and watching what the child says back. And the child's like, yeah, it's really bad. Now, that is going to be the response because it's ruining the kid's life. And he doesn't want to have his life ruined, right? No one wants to have their life ruined. So he says to his father, yeah, it's really bad for me. Okay. And the father says, like, what are we supposed to do about that? What are we going to do? Because I can't take it away from you because we both know that's really bad. And I also can't be your father and watch you do this. So like we've got to figure out. And what happens is my coach, right, my business coach, Jacob, who's an awesome guy, he says an amazing thing. Don't be on the other side of the table as the person you're trying to help. Make it very clear that you and them are on the same side of the table against the problem. And this is everything in communication. You never want to be on the other side of the table as your child. You want to basically make it crystal clear to your child or your employee or your colleagues that I'm on the same side as you against this problem. So you say to the kid, look, I'm with you because I can't take it away from you because you're going to just get another one. And I cannot watch you not do anything. So you and me together, how are we going to deal with this problem? So the kid then was thinking, and he said to his dad, why don't you come in at 10 or 10:30, I don't remember, 10 or 10:30, and take it away from me? And the father was like, you sure you can? Is the kid's like, yeah. And that was like an unbelievably powerful moment where it came from the child. It came from him. It was guided by the child. And there's nothing a parent could have said that could ever replicate that. There's nothing. And by the way, this isn't just parenting. If you've got a colleague or an employee or someone you're teaching, you've got to teach them the principle and then ask them to tell you, what are you ready for? What are you ready for? What I work with people now, right? I help people who are business leaders. And I say to them, look, you've got this problem. And like, what are we going to do about that problem? And what we do is we discuss the principles at play. Really, really discuss the principles at play. What's actually happening? And then the person understands the principles. And then I say to them, what do you think would be most helpful in this moment? And people know. The reason people know is because people have their own wisdom. People have the wisdom inside of themselves that can solve their own problems. You just have to create this space where that can become available. And then you will succeed in relationships. Otherwise, and you see this, you probably see this yourself, Doron. Parents will literally be knocking their head against a brick wall. Fighting, battling power struggles with their kids. And like, it doesn't work. No. If it would work, then we can have the conversation. Like, often a parent will say to me, like, I can't just let the kid do whatever he wants, right? And I say, well, what are you doing? And the kid's like, well, I'm fighting with the kid every night. I was like, well, how's that going for you? Well, it's not going at all, like, does it work? No. Does the kid give me their phone? No. Like, it's not working. It doesn't work. So if it would work, then maybe there's a conversation to be had, but it doesn't work. Even younger kids today, they get around everything. You can't put filters on anything today.
Yeah.
I know of a parent who put one of the strongest filters in the world on the kid's computer. The kid went into the setup of the computer and made the computer at a date before the filter was on. So he just like, and he Googled how to do that, like he just like asked, if you're doing the battle thing, if you're doing the power struggle, the kid's always going to outsmart you. That's why you have to have a dialogue.
I like that, sitting on the same side of the table. So you're going through life's journey together.
Yes, you're on the same side. And I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. And not only that, I don't know your world, so you tell me. I don't know what this is like for you. I don't know how this experience is like for you. It's like, how's your day? Good. Don't give me that tone. I'm your father. Don't just say good. So, like, is that the time and place to do the discipline thing? Well, why is the kid only giving you a one-word answer? Well, use your brain. Why is the kid not engaging in dialogue? He doesn't hate you. I tell you, a kid almost never really hates their parent. I heard a very scary line the other day. I think Eliana told it to me. Don't remember where she heard it. But the line went like this: when you punish a child, or when you chastise a child, they don't hate you more. They don't love you less. They hate themselves more. Yeah, when you punish a child, they don't love you less. They hate themselves more. Because you're the parent. They're always one of the greatest pains a child can experience is I've let my parents down. It's like one of the most excruciatingly painful things a child can experience is that they've let their parents down. My parents are upset with me. And interestingly, very often what that does is it creates pain and suffering in the mind of the child. And in order to medicate that pain, and in order to feel some sort of comfort, then many things can happen, but two things can happen. One is they will declare war on the parent, because it's a bit more tolerable if the parent's the enemy. And that's why sometimes children will randomly declare war with the parent, because if the parent's the enemy, I can tolerate that pain a little bit more, even though it still doesn't really help. The other thing children do is they turn to things to numb their experience of life. So whether it's gaming, or whether it's watching crazy stuff on the internet, or whether it's some sort of substances use, abuse, alcohol, whatever it is. Because the pain of being a failure, and can you imagine if a parent is saying to the child horrendous things about how much of a failure the child is? The parent may be being innocent and the parent's trying to motivate the child, but all that really does is it just knocks the child deeper into the ground. And, it's like, but what the parent says to me, but what, I'm supposed to just sit here and not do anything? Obviously not. Obviously you have to do something to help the child. The child's suffering. But there's ways and ways of doing something, like you're not going to get him to change by screaming and shouting at the kid and, saying you're a failure, you're going to fail life, no one's going to marry you, like parents say that to their kids. So that's really, really important, is to be on the same side as your kid and say, look, there's this issue, how are we going to deal with that? Like mature adults,
And context for having that conversation, is that important?
It's everything. That's the principle of environment.
Guessing by context, you don't mean others upon him.
Context is a place where we feel safe and seen, right? So context.
There might be kids who do find others upon him. No, I'm not trying to put anyone out of business, but I'm saying there might be some kids who do feel comfortable there, but for the vast majority.
No, it's got to be a space where the kid feels comfortable and safe. And this is much more fundamental than people realize. This is like, if you think about a seed, yeah? I love saying this. If you think about a little seed, apple seed, you put it in the ground. Now, that tiny little black seed has inside itself incredible latent wisdom to become a tree to produce hundreds of apples, thousands of apples, right? What does that seed need to grow? Soil, right? The nutrients of the ground, sunlight, water, and oxygen, right? There's nothing anyone can ever do to pull the seed out of the ground and slowly schlep out the leaves it grows on its own. The seed knows how to grow on its own. All you can do for that seed is provide it with an environment and let it do its thing. Babies are born and they grow. You just got to feed them. You've got to give them love, and you've got to give them security, safety, and warmth, and you've got to give them a healthy environment, and they grow on their own. They do. Children grow on their own. If you God forbid, would get a cut on your arm, right? There's nothing you can do to heal your arm. It heals on its own. You just got to keep it safe.
It's true. I'm a big believer in that. I got an interesting message from a really, from a mother a few weeks ago, in panic mode because of something that happened with the kid and school, whatever it was, and their Yiddishkeit, and I really felt that my job was to calm them down rather than to say, make any changes to the situation. They're excellent parents. They're loving. The environment is there and conducive for the kid to grow. Now, the kid's not growing exactly the right direction. Take your analogy of plants. Plants don't grow in a mechanical straight way, exactly. Right? Plants will move towards hopefully good sunlight,
yeah.
But they don't all grow in exactly the same way. So this kid's going on a bit of a journey. But I said to them, I said, Hashem gives everyone free will. Everyone has bechira, and we can't manipulate. Yeah. And move away from manipulation and move towards facilitation.
100%.
We cannot force our kids into do things. It doesn't work.
100%.
So then my job comes to just to come. Essentially, I don't want to be crass, but it's like I just say now our job as parents, in a way, and I know this is being quite blunt with it, is just don't mess it up.
Yeah, get out of the way. Get out of the way. Yeah.
Almost a bit like that.
Get out of the way. Yeah, get out of the way.
But that's hard, and especially for a father. And especially for us that grew up in a generation where the approach was radically different.
So there's a caveat and there's a danger. There's a massive danger here. The worst thing a parent can do, listening to this, is step away. Because there's the one thing worse than overbearing and anger and excessive, obsessive, manipulation, as you call it. The one thing worse than that is neglect. For a kid to feel I've been abandoned is the worst thing. That is the worst thing. So you don't want your kid to feel you've abandoned them. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but you probably say for, you're probably safer with negative attention. There's no attention at all, right? But the point is that parents' job is to love unconditionally. I have to tell you, can I tell you something? When my daughter was 5, my oldest daughter was 5, we were leaving Israel to move to England. And about 2 weeks before we left Israel, she got some random infection on her neck. One of her lymph nodes was infected, and it was really scary. We went to hospital. She was in hospital for about a week. But when we got to the hospital, this is really intense. When we got to the hospital, I'll never forget this. They had to give her antibiotics, right? But in order to get antibiotics, they had to put a cannula into her wrist. Now, she was 5, and she obviously didn't want a needle going into her wrist. So it was an Arab doctor, big, scary, tall guy with a beard. And he basically got me and my wife to hold her down while he put this needle into her wrist, and she was screaming. She was screaming. She was not happy, right? And me and my wife were holding her down, and this doctor put the needle in her wrist. And then he left the room, and we hugged her and we calmed her down, and she was fine. Let me ask you something. Why in that moment didn't she come to the conclusion that these two parents must be terrible people? Why didn't she come to the conclusion that, oh my God, these people are terrible and they're obviously against me. They just literally held me down, and there's some weird man put a needle in my, why didn't we become the enemy? And the answer is, there's different answers, but I think the main answer is because by the time she was 5 years old, we'd probably hugged and kissed her and told her we loved her probably more than 10,000 times, right? Do the maths. Tens of thousands of times. And there have been tens of thousands of interactions of positivity and love and security, just undiluted, uninterrupted, unconditional love. That goes so deep. It runs so deep in your veins. And when your parents once in a blue moon discipline you because they have to, because you need antibiotics or the kid's running a rule, whatever the case may be, the kid still has absolutely massive amounts of positive subconscious reinforcement that is deep in their blood, that my parents love me unconditionally, right? And that's the job of a parent. The job of a parent is to absolutely shower the kid with as much love as possible, right? As much love as possible, and get out of the way and let the kids get bloody knees. Kids need to get bloody knees. You don't have to give them the bloody knees. Life will give them bloody knees. Life will give them tests. Life will really test human beings, but you've got to be there for them as they fall. You've got to be there for them to give them a hug after they've fallen, right? You can't mollycoddle a kid. You can't put cotton wool around a child and protect them forever. And that's not the goal. The goal is to let them do life and recognize that life is hard. But you've got to be there for them with love to show them that I'm on the same side as you and I'm going to be for you no matter what. And that's crucial. By the way, I can't resist. But to say from a Jewish point of view, imagine, God forbid, the first time my daughter would have met us as parents was in that hospital. Imagine the very first time she would have met me and Eliana. Let's say she got adopted or whatever, right? And the week before she went to hospital, she met us. And then we hold her down. Yes, she will stay far away from me. And a lot of people, their first experience of Hashem and Torah is when tragedy strikes. That's very scary. That's very scary. You've got to be building a relationship with Hashem and Torah from day one. Every meal you eat is a kiss. Every ray of sunshine is a expression of love from Hashem. Every word of Torah, every time you daven, every time you experience anything good, you say thank you to Hashem. And then yes, Hashem will sometimes do things to me that's painful. But when you recognize that in the context of the environment of everything good, it's a different story. It's a different story. But that's why we parents have to model that, right? We've got to be showering unconditional, endless, infinite amounts of love as much as possible. And then the once in a blue moon when you have to put your foot down, doesn't burn the bridge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So that really is the second principle of environment, that parents, all we can do is set the environment. And by the way, this is really positive and also really scary at the same time, because it means you cannot affect change. You cannot pull the tree out of the ground. You can't. It will happen in its own time. You can only set the environment. That's sometimes can be difficult, but at the same time, it gives you something to do. Parent often says to me, and you probably have the same thing, like the parent's distraught because there's nothing they can do about a situation. They really, really want to fix a situation. They can't. It's not on you to fix the situation. It's on you to provide an environment for the kid. How often does a kid get bullied in school, right? And they don't know who, it's impossible to know who's the bully. And you can't fix that anyway, right? And they're going to go back to school and they're going to struggle. And you're torn because you're seeing your child suffer. Obviously, if there's something you can do, do it, right? If there's something you can do to intervene and stop the bully, okay? But sometimes you can't. And you've got to be there for the kid when he comes home. And your job is to be, and by the way, sometimes parents freak out because of situations. And innocently, without meaning to, they ruin the environment. Do you know what it's like? It's like when there's a a lot of families experience this in shidduchim, right? When a kid gets old enough to get married, and some contentious issue keeps coming up, right? It keeps coming up again and again and again. Let's say there's a kid who's going through something, and there's a bit of a battle between the parents and the child, and it could be like 5 times a day they're battling about this thing. What people don't realize is whether you win the fight or not, whether you get through to the kid or not, you've ruined the environment. Now the home is not a place I want to be in anymore. That's when they've lost the game. That's the end. Yes, this may be an issue you have to deal with, but I'm begging you, no matter what, do not trade in your environment for that. Because that's burning the bridge. You don't want to burn the bridge. If you burn the bridge, you've lost.
Even if I feel that my child is polluting my environment. I have standards in my house. I don't want this in my house.
Give me a real example.
A real example would be, okay, we've spoken already about a smartphone. Chilul Shabbos.
Okay, tell me more.
I don't want an environment of Chilul Shabbos in my house. I don't want a scenario where, I've put, let's be real about it. I've put my blood, sweat, and tears into becoming often parents of Bali Tshuva, in becoming frum, in being Moise Nefesh for a Torah home, and now my child's being Mechal Shabbos, and you know what impact it's going to have on the other siblings?
There's an oldest child, right? Often, let's say it's an oldest child.
Say.
And all the kids look up to this child. And let's say the other kids are on the fence.
Okay, so you made it worse. Okay,
Let's say the other kids are on the fence.
Yeah.
And you've got a bunch of teenagers, and your 19-year-old, who everyone loves and respects, has just stopped keeping Shabbos in public. Right?
Yeah.
And let's make it even worse. The kid says to you, should I move out? I've got a place and the money and friends. Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want me to move out because I'm having a bad influence on my siblings? And he says, I'll still love you no matter what. I'll still come and love you and respect you.
Yeah, that's difficult.
What do you think, Doron? What would you do? What would you tell
I can say what I'd like to think I would do.
What would you like to think you would do?
But I don't know if I have to be brutally honest. This podcast is a place for honesty. Is that I don't know how I'd act in the moment, but I would like to think, and this is what I tell parents a lot, is that it's a fantastic opportunity to show all the children how broad and expansive Yiddishkeit is, that we have place for this person, that we can love them unconditionally. You don't know, don't go, stay here. You stay here. Because there is obviously the element of what's best for that person, but because this is a question that's been asked about what about the other kids, so I'm answering it from that angle. Right, we're not just talking about a single child. We're talking about what about the impact on the family, the impact on the environment. I think that holistically, in a sense, when you kick that kid out, every other kid in that family, I'm not passing judgment on anyone that's done it. I don't know the ins and outs.
I am passing judgment.
Okay, you're welcome to do that. No. But again, and then every situation is unique, and there are different whatever. I don't want to get into any kind of
ruffle feathers.
Exactly. But just from my very humble perspective is that I believe I heard this from one of my Rabbeim, and I just think that you kick that kid out, so you've taught all the other kids a really important lesson. Judaism can't handle this.
You're right.
Yiddishkeit can't handle this. It can't. It's just not. It's not. It can't do it. And I think you give a much more powerful approach if you show that no, actually it can. And you sit down with the other children, and you explain that. Be specific, but that's what I would say. What would you say?
So I don't tell people what to do, right? So I'm not going to pass practical, what you should do in any given situation. But what I will say is the principle, and the principle is, this is the third principle, is you can never, ever, 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 ever. And if I had more time, I would say ever lots of times.
Yeah, we can just loop it.
Yeah, can we please?
Afterwards, yeah, I'll get the editor to loop it.
Like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
like Family Guy. We can never, ever, ever, ever correlate acceptance and approval. Okay, what that means is you can never, ever communicate to a kid, I will only love you if I approve of your behavior. That is non-negotiable, okay? You can never, ever communicate to a child, I will only love and accept you if you play by my rules, you walk my walk, you talk my talk, you do my lifestyle, okay? You do life how I want you to do life. You have to communicate to a child, I love and accept you no matter what. There's nothing you can ever do that will make me not love you. Ever, ever, ever. Now, practically speaking, sometimes you have to make decisions in life. But you've got to know what cannot be moved. What cannot be moved is you cannot ever communicate to a child that I'm not going to love and accept you if you don't do something. Okay? If you can maintain that 100%, then do whatever you want. The principle is that we're living in a generation where parents are very scared of their children, right? Parents are scared of upsetting their children and upset, You can disagree with your kids. I don't mind. You can disagree with your kids' choices, their opinions, their lifestyle. But as long as you don't disagree with them as a person, like one day and says, I think it's important to give every single penny of charity that we ever have to the environment and to like the whales, and making sure like the pandas in China don't go extinct. And my child has developed a worldview that is the most important thing in the world. I'm going to tell my child that I think they're wrong. Yeah, deeply wrong. Like, there are things in our life far greater than that. But that's not going to impact my relationship with the child. Yeah, a lot of parents, unfortunately, when a kid stops keeping Shabbos, they put a distance between them and the kid. And what that communicates to that kid and the other kids, and I think your spouse as well, is that I will only love you as long as you toe the line. But if you don't toe the line and walk my walk, I'm going to stop loving you. Or I'm going to stop expressing my love for you. I'm going to stop accepting you. And that's more dangerous than anything else in the world. That's more dangerous than breaking Shabbos, in my opinion.
Do you need to have a healthy relationship, though, to live like that? Where 100%. You can say, I disagree with your perspective, your actions, but not with you as a person.
Yes, you have to have a strong relationship. And if the person doesn't have a strong relationship, that's the scariest thing in the world. That is the scariest thing in the world, because without a relationship, you can't do anything. And when that kid, again, I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers. I don't know how you say that word, and upset some people saying this, but I don't care, okay? I care a little bit, which is why
we can edit it out afterwards.
Can be, yeah, if I'm insecure about it.
Yeah.
But a lot of what some parents say, and I'm not passing judgment and saying you should or shouldn't do this, but it does upset me a little bit, is what some parents let the kids stay in the house and they tell the other kids that that child is sick. He has an illness.
Yeah.
He has an illness.
Yeah.
Nebuch, he has an illness. It's like he can't put on tefillin because he doesn't have an arm. You're Nebuch. Or he can't go to shul because he has to be in hospital to get treatment. So he doesn't go to minyan. Nebuch. This kid has an illness. Nebuch, he can't keep Shabbos. That really bothers me. Because like sometimes the kid's not ill. The kid's fine. He's just figuring life out. He's just figuring things out. And if the kid thinks that you think he's ill, That's like really bad, in my opinion. The kid's not ill. He's just figuring. Maybe, just maybe, the parents didn't give the kid a healthy perception of Shabbos. Maybe Shabbos was grief-stricken with anxiety and like panic because Shabbos was an anxious time in the home. Maybe that's on the parents. I don't know. Maybe the kid had a traumatic relationship with Shabbos somewhere, somehow, and he's on a journey figuring. I don't know.
So what do you communicate to the other kids? Principally speaking, obviously you can't, every situation
that there's nothing you can ever do that will make me reject you as a person.
No, but I'm saying
from a Jewish point of view,
communicate to the other kids.
From a Jewish point of view, from a relationship point of view.
I'm saying you don't turn around to the other kids and say he's nebuch, he's not ill. You say he's going on his journey. He's going on his journey and this is where he's up to. I don't see why that's such a difficult thing to say. Avram Avinu didn't keep Shabbos when he was 15 either.
Right. So then people say, so what people say to me in that situation is, well, what if the other kids say, well, can I stop keeping Shabbos? The other kids say, well, can I be like him?
I guess it depends on age appropriate. As in, if the child that responds that is 15, then that's as you would call it, a permission for like a real conversation. There's a real conversation that needs to be had, because if he's 15 years old or 14 years old and in his head he's thinking, well, why can't I keep Shabbos? So like a 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, he's not going to think that. It's better to have that conversation now than when he's by himself somewhere, or when he's good. If he's younger, then I hear you have to word it differently, maybe for a different age.
And listen, it's hard. Emotionally, it's hard for me to like Shabbos is the greatest gift in the world. Like, how can the person not like without? I don't know where I would be today without Shabbos. Like, genuinely, like I do not know where.
But kids and teenagers won't see it.
No, they won't. But it's on us to give them that. It's on us to show the kids that Shabbos is the most incredible time in the world. And the only way to do that, and this might be heavy. I mean, it's heavy for me, right? But I mean, this is a bitter pill to swallow, and I think parents need to hear this. Is that if somebody does not enjoy spending time on their own, they're gonna really struggle with Shabbos. If again, we're living in a TikTok generation, right? We're living in a scrolling shorts generation, right? Where like people need like
it's constant
2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So the only way to experience Shabbos in a positive way is if you really enjoy time on your own. Now that's something that's quite hard to learn. But if you're a parent who wants to give your kids Shabbos, you got to teach them how to do that. And I say, do whatever it takes. Find exciting board games, get exciting activities, find some arts and crafts you can do on Shabbos. Have exciting meals, have really exciting meals, have incredible food, have thought-provoking, challenging conversation. Often in my Shabbos table, we have moral dilemmas. We get the kids arguing. We get them engaged in dialogue. And it's funky. It's fun. It's different. Think out of the box. But if you don't make...
Can I tell you what we do every Friday night?
Yeah, go on.
Massive games of hide and seek.
Really?
Proper hide and seek. The kids love it. The kids love it.
That is brilliant.
And
do you and Zava get involved?
Surprised, more me than her, but being like, no, it's a real, like, the kids, one of the things that kids look forward to on Shabbos is hide and seek.
And I think what you just made me remember, and it's actually really good for me to hear this as well, is that the greatest pleasure a kid can have is undiluted, completely devoted attention from their parents.
Which in 2025 you can't get unless it's Shabbos.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. Shabbos is literally the greatest gift. Like, I don't know what we would do without it. Do you know, when we were living in Welling Garden City, Shabbos was such an incredible thing because we were busy during the week. Like, we didn't get to see our family that much. Also because of school, right? And Shabbos, we just stayed indoors. There was no air. Like, we stayed indoors and we played. We just played. We chatted. We played Monopoly, played chess. We sang songs. It was fun. Here it's harder because we're living, like you go down the road, you go to the neighbors, to your cousin, whatever it is. But it's really, really important. And I think you're right. I think and maybe this is a different podcast that you have to start doing, Doron, but I think for a child to go through that conversation at 15 with permission from the parents in a non-judgmental space is a lot better than when he has that crisis. He wakes up on the other side of being married with 2 kids and be like, hey, do I want to keep Shabbos?
For sure, yeah.
That's really scary,
That's why I would say a forced or a controlled or a manipulated Yiddishkeit when the kid's in the home. It can just mean that. So all the room. Meaning is when does their bechira start? When they're alone.
Exactly.
Their bechira never started at home, and you want their bechira to start at home.
Exactly. Yeah.
If their bechira starts at home, then there still is what you would call in the arena of creating a good environment, a healthy environment.
Right.
But look, I want to end with a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a part 2 one day.
For sure.
See what the comments are saying.
If we've not been blacklisted from.
First of all, is what would you say to a parent listening that it hasn't got a clean slate anymore? They've I wouldn't say messed up, no judgment passed, but things have moved on, and they're not like all right, I've got a clean slate, I'll tune into a podcast and get some advice. They're in a pretty dark place with the situation, how it's unfolded. How can they get things back? What would you advise them to do?
Emergency medicine. The emergency medicine is do whatever it takes to regain your relationship with your child. And there's always a way, because children want relationships with their parents. But you've got to say sorry, you've got to apologize, and you've got to start again. You've got to say, from now on, I am going to have a relationship with my child. And you're not perfect, and you're going to mess up, and you're going to slip up again, and you're going to slide back into whatever habits you had, but keep on trying. Because without that, there's nothing to discuss. Without a relationship, there's nobody home.
And I think what parents need to hear is, I think often parents are afraid that saying sorry is a sign of weakness.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, but to the child, it's a sign of strength.
100%. And by the way,
they give much more respect.
It gives, and on a very deep psychological level, when a parent says sorry to the child can love and accept themselves more, because deep down, when a parent gets angry with a child, there's a small part of the child's voice that says it's my fault. I'm at fault. I'm bad. And when a parent owns it and says sorry, it gives the child permission again to love themselves, which is so huge.
Yeah.
It's so huge.
I had that recently. This week, a father called me up from school. It was a case where I'd given a kid like a negative on the system, whatever, a consequence, for something which I Pasha didn't realize that, I was making a mistake, whatever. I don't want to go into the circumstances to protect. So I know that as soon as the parent let me know, I said to the father, I'm sorry, like I genuinely made a mistake. And I said, and please tell your son from me that I'm sorry. So the father says, no, it's fine. Like, don't worry. I guess it's fine. I said, no, you have to tell him sorry. No, because you're a rabbi. I said, that's why you have to tell him sorry. Yeah. The teenager is a teenager, not a kid. He's a teenager. No, of course not. No, I'm joking. I did. I said,
3.
Yeah. But I said, it's a big chinuch for him to be able to learn that the rabbi made a mistake, and he said, I'm sorry. I didn't. So
that's true.
It's powerful. Two more questions. Number one is.
Sorry, can I just say one last thing?
Go ahead.
Parents need to find things that they both enjoy. So you got to find things both you and your kid enjoys and do it together. Find space to chill. Find space to have fun, and do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes. Yeah. Go on. What's the next question?
If you could turn round now and speak to the adults in your life that didn't understand you, maybe in your mind pick one or pick a few,
right.
Or they're all here in the room.
Yeah.
What would you say to them now?
I would say ask questions. I would say ask. Don't, before you do anything, ask 1,000 questions to have clarity on what's going on. Because until you know what's going on, you can't diagnose. You have to know what's going on. And the only way to know what's going on is to ask questions. So say what's going on in your life. Why are you acting out this way? But really ask.
Yeah.
And really listen. Really, really ask and really listen.
And
that's the safe version.
Good. And if you could go back now in time and say something to your teenage self,
To my own self.
15-year-old Yaakov. Speak to him now. What would you say?
Don't know if I can handle the emotional elements of this question.
You get a therapy session on our house.
Really?
That's what this podcast has been.
They're very, very therapeutic. What would I say to a 15-year-old me? What would I say to a 15-year-old me? Because I have done this in therapy. I've really gone back and visited, a lot of my old self. I think the main thing I would speak about is that it's okay to explore. It's okay to explore, and it's okay to make mistakes. I think I held on in such a big way to mistakes I made, or having let people down, or not living up to what I thought I should be living up to. And you're only 15, like 15-year-olds are supposed to get things wrong.
Yeah.
15-year-olds are supposed to break windows. They're supposed to get in trouble. They're supposed to get arrested, maybe not, 15-year-olds are supposed to make mistakes, right? So I think I held on to those mistakes too long. Felt guilty about them, and that's one of the greatest damages is the guilt. That's what I would probably say. The rest I probably can't say on a podcast, around.
That'll be for part 2.
Part 2, yeah, exactly.
Rabbi Yaakov, thank you. Where can people find more of your work, your website, things like that?
Rabbi Yaakov Tatz, Healthy Mind Matters, and the 8 Principles of Human Connection. It's all online, and I'm findable. I'm on. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll try to put a link or something in on.
Yeah,
the
you're a
description.
legend, Doron. Thank you. This has been incredibly powerful, and I think it's so powerful that you're creating this space. I think even for a parent just to hear that there are other parents going through this, that's everything.
100%.
Big love.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Yaakov.
Doron. Thank you.
Hello again. Did you know that statistically speaking, most listeners of podcasts do not hit the subscribe button? It's a very small press, but it makes a massive difference to us and will literally help us keep going. Thank you so much and enjoy your day.